There's a specific kind of loneliness that hits in your 20s that nobody warned you about. Not the loneliness of being alone, the loneliness of watching friendships you thought would last forever slowly go quiet. No fight, no falling out, just distance. You still care about them, they probably still care about you, but somehow the friendship just fades. And the worst part, nobody tells you why it happens, so you assume it means something is wrong with you, or with them, or with the friendship itself. But that is not how it is, and there's a real psychological reason this happens, and once you understand it, you can actually do something about it. So today we're breaking down the 6 real mechanics of friendship drift in your 20s, why it happens, why it accelerates, and what actually holds friendships together when life starts pulling everyone in different directions. Let's get into it. Mechanics 1. Your 20s remove the conditions that made friendship automatic. Here's something most people never realize. You didn't build your closest friendships through effort. You built them through circumstance. Psychologist Leon Festinger studied this in the 1950s and found something deceptively simple. The biggest predictor of friendship wasn't personality. It wasn't shared interests. It was proximity. Physical closeness, repeated exposure, and shared environments. School gave you all 3. You saw the same people every day. You were thrown into the same rooms, the same classes, the same situations. Friendship wasn't something you had to schedule. It was something that happened to you. Then your 20s hit. Everyone scatters. Different cities, different jobs, different schedules. The infrastructure that was quietly doing the work of building your friendships just disappears. And most people don't realize that's what happened. They just feel the drift and wonder what went wrong. Not knowing, nothing went wrong. The conditions just changed, and nobody told you that adult friendships don't run on the same system. Mechanics 2. Adult friendships don't maintain themselves, and most people never switch strategies. Marissa Franco, a psychologist who spent years studying adult friendship, makes this point directly in her work. Childhood friendships are essentially passive. The environment does most of the maintenance. Adult friendships are active. If no one is deliberately tending to them, they fade. Think about your closest friendship from school. How much effort did it take to maintain it then? Almost none. You were just around each other. Now think about how that same friendship runs today. Does it require a calendar invite, a week of trying to find a time that works, a genuine effort from both sides just to stay connected? Most people in their 20s are still operating on the passive maintenance model. They assume that if the friendship is real, it'll survive without much effort, that if they care about someone, the caring is enough to keep the connection alive. It does not work that way. Franco's research is clear. Adult friendship doesn't decay because people stop caring. It decays because no one switches strategies. No one realizes that what used to be automatic now has to be intentional. The drift isn't a signal that the friendship wasn't real. It's a signal that you're using an outdated system. Mechanics 3. Your attachment style is quietly sabotaging your friendships. Now, here's the part most people skip, and it's the one that matters most. You have an attachment style. Most people know this from romantic relationships: anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, secure attachment. What they don't know is that the same patterns show up in platonic relationships too. And in your 20s, when friendships get harder to maintain, attachment patterns become louder. If you have anxious attachment, you might interpret normal drift as rejection. You read into the silence. You feel hurt but don't say anything. You start withdrawing to protect yourself from being let down, and the friendship gets quieter, not because they don't care, but because your anxiety is running a protection strategy you never consciously chose. If you have avoidant attachment, you might tell yourself you don't need close friendships that often, that you're just independent, that it's fine. You don't initiate, you don't reach out, you let the natural drift do its work without pushing back, because getting close feels like a risk your nervous system learned not to take. Franco's work shows that people with insecure attachment styles are more likely to interpret ambiguous social situations negatively. They assume a friend's silence means disinterest rather than busyness, and that interpretation becomes self-fulfilling. You don't reach out because you assume they don't want to hear from you, so they don't hear from you, so they also drift. And then you have evidence for what you already believed. This is happening quietly, under the surface, in friendships all over your 20s. Mechanics 4. Life path divergence is real, and most people handle it badly. Here's a truth that's uncomfortable. Not every friendship is designed to survive your 20s, and that's not a failure. Your 20s are the decade of divergence. People make wildly different choices, career paths, cities, relationships, values. The person you were close to at 19 might be living a completely different life by 26, and sometimes the friendship quietly becomes a source of tension rather than comfort. One of you is grinding through a demanding career. The other is prioritizing freedom and travel. One of you has a serious partner or a baby. The other is still figuring out who they are. One of you is changing fast. The other feels like they're standing still. None of this is anyone's fault, but it creates distance that's harder to name than a fight. What most people do wrong here is avoid the discomfort. They keep the friendship at a surface level to avoid acknowledging how different they've become. They keep things light because going deeper feels risky. Franco's research suggests something different. Friendships that survive major divergence aren't ones where the people stayed similar. They're ones where the people stayed curious about each other, where the difference became interesting rather than threatening. The question isn't whether you and your friend are still the same, it's whether you can still be genuinely curious about who they're becoming, and whether they can offer you the same. If the answer is yes, the divergence is survivable. If it's no, the drift might be exposing the true nature of the friendship. Mechanics 5. You're not just losing friends, you're in the middle of a friendship recession. This one is bigger than just you and your social circle. Researchers who study social connection have documented something they call the friendship recession, a generational scale decline in close friendships, particularly among young adults. People are reporting fewer close friends than previous generations. More people are reporting having no close friend at all. This matters because your experience of friendship drift isn't just personal, it's happening inside a culture that has systematically dismantled the conditions that generate friendship. Remote work removes the workplace as a proximity structure. Social media creates the illusion of connection while replacing actual depth. Hustle culture reframes socializing as unproductive. Hyper-individualism tells you that needing close friends is a weakness. And social media deserves its own honest look here. You see the highlight reel of everyone else's social life and assume you're the only one sitting alone on a Friday night wondering where all your friends went. You're not. The performance of connection has replaced a lot of the actual thing. Your friendship drift isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening in a culture that has stopped building the conditions for friendship and hasn't told you. Mechanics 6. Friendships can be rebuilt, but not the way you think. You might have heard some advice say, just reach out more, be vulnerable, put yourself out there. That advice isn't wrong, but it skips the part that makes it actually work. Franco's research points to something specific. Adult friendships don't get rebuilt through grand gestures or deep conversations out of nowhere. They get rebuilt through what she calls low-stakes, repeated contact. Small interactions, consistent over time, not performative, not heavy, not loaded. A voice note instead of a text, a meme that actually reminded you of them, not as a way of keeping score, but because it actually made you remember them. Showing up to something they care about, even briefly. Asking a follow-up question about something they mentioned 3 weeks ago. The pattern that creates friendship, repeated exposure, shared context, genuine attention, still works in adulthood. You just have to build the conditions yourself instead of waiting for a school environment to build them for you. And here's the piece about attachment. If your pattern is to wait until you're sure someone wants to hear from you before you reach out, that pattern will cost you friendships. The research is clear that most people underestimate how much others want to hear from them. In such situations, you think the silence is awkward, they think you stopped caring. No one reaches out, and the friendship slowly becomes a memory. Your friendships aren't fading because you're bad at friendship. They're fading because you're using a system that stopped working the moment you graduated. The structural conditions that generated proximity, repeated contact, shared context were all stripped away by your 20s, and nobody replaced it with instructions for what to do next. Now you know what's actually happening. The drift isn't proof that friendships are fragile or that people don't care. It's proof that adult friendship runs on a different engine, and most people never get told how to fuel it. You can't undo the divergence. You can't recreate school, but you can start building the conditions, small, consistent, intentional, and that keep real friendships alive. That's not a motivational suggestion. That's just how it works. Thank you for watching. If you found value, share in the comments how you handle and stay connected to your friends. We will like to hear your strategies. And if you know someone who will benefit from this video, send it to them. Subscribe for more. See you in the next one.